What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens episode review. Today, guys, we are going to be going over episode 71 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. I'm excited, as always, to be discussing these episodes with you guys, so without further ado, let's not waste any more time, and let's jump right into it. So, generally speaking, what were my thoughts on episode 71 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens? Well, I thought this was another interesting episode. If I'm going to be honest, these last four episodes, or essentially this entire arc, has been really bizarre, to say the least. And I think a big aspect to that is that we don't really have a plot going on right now. I mean, we don't have any villains right now. They might set up for Nanaho from the last episode to maybe potentially be some sort of threat, and even kind of have Yuo as a threat as well. But other than that, we really don't have a plot going on right now because they haven't really made their move yet. So right now, I don't want to call it fluff because it really isn't that, but to some degree, it kind of feels like it. It's just more just showing how everyone has developed at Goha Corporation right now, how everyone is fitting in to Goha Corporation, since everyone is assumingly working at Goha now. And this episode is more focused on Roman's perspective of how she is working at Goha Corporation, because we saw what Gakuto is doing back in episode 69. We kind of saw Yuga's whole position in episode 69 and 70 for that matter as well. And now this episode is definitely more focused on Roman and her whole aspect of being the chef at Goha Corporation, and we kind of see that where she ends up talking to Mimi once she actually comes back to Goha Corporation, because if you guys remember back in episode 68, she got a letter saying that she was allowed to come back to Goha Corporation. Obviously not the position that she used to be at, but she still gets to work at Goha Corporation now. And you know, they end up having a little bit of an exchange, and Roman asks Mimi, hey, when it comes to lunchtime, will you actually come and try my curry? And obviously Mimi gets excited by that, and she says, yeah, I'll try out your curry. And obviously Roman gets so excited about that, she ends up going off screen, and then we get to see where Mimi is going to be working at now, and we see her going into the elevator to go down to like the 52 basement floor, it looks like. I mean, this building is massive, which, to be fair, we knew that there was going to be some underground parts of the Goha Corporation building, because obviously that's where Nail was working at, was underground. But the fact that there's 52 levels just under like ground level is just insane to me. Like, this building is massive, just from, you know, from ground up and even ground down, to the point where there's over 50 floors in the basement, which is just insane. But we see her go into the basement area. She's essentially in the same room where people are like testing with different experience. They were lab people at Goha Corporation, and she essentially has to do all of her computer work in that same room. And as she's working on her work, they keep testing out experiments. Everything is just blowing up in the room, essentially. And it gets to the point where Mimi gets tired of this. You know, she's getting different emails and stuff like that about what's going on as well. And when it finally comes to lunchtime, after working for so long, probably since the morning to the afternoon, and having to deal with all these scientists, she's just ready to go and eat. And as she's going to go and get ready to eat something at the cafeteria, she notices that Yuga was having a conversation with the other Goha siblings, Yuro, Eugene, why can I not remember? Yuka, there we go. There's a lot of U names in this show. I do apologize if I don't remember them. Yuro, Eugene, Euron, and Yuka. He's talking to all four of them, and Mimi walks by the room, and she then makes this statement where she decides to say, all of the siblings' names and Yugioh, and picks up on the fact that all of them have the U name on it, which is a big theory that went around when the whole like six sibling thing kind of went all about, where, you know, it would make sense that Yugioh is the sixth Goha president because of him having that U name. And Mimi is now starting to realize that maybe Yugioh can be that sixth Goha president because he has the same line as the other presidents with the U line in it, because all of them have the starting letters as U. Now, me personally, this has been something that I feel like has been the highest of possible chances. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand why people said that Rook was going to be it. I understand why people said that Swirly was going to be it. But I felt like Yugioh definitely was the highest possible chance of being that. Not only because of the U name, but let's be honest here. When we look at the opening, we can clearly see that hairstyle looked very similar to Yugioh's. I mean, it just is stacking towards Yugioh being this sixth Goha sibling. And the reason why I really wanted to bring this up is because I've seen a lot of people on Twitter mention, oh, Yugioh cannot be the sixth Goha president because of Mimi mentioning this, because of what happened with Swirly. Remember, she thought Swirly was the sixth Goha president because of the fact, you know, he knew a code at the building and was able to check in that little compartment where all the Goha president heads were at. And she starts to question, you know, how he knew the code to get in there. And that's why she assumed that he was the sixth Goha president. And now the fact that she is realizing that, oh, Yugioh has the same U name as the other presidents, maybe that's the case. And me personally, it makes the most sense that Yugioh will be the sixth Goha president. Now, is it going to be confirmed? We'll have to wait and see. Personally, I don't know how to feel about it, because here's the thing, even though I think it's a very high chance that it's going to be Yugioh, I kind of hope it's not Yugioh, because I know why people are fighting against this because of Mimi saying this. I'm fighting against it because it's the most obvious answer. And you might think, well, if it is the most obvious answer, why would you fight against it? Well, I kind of don't want it to be obvious. One of my favorite things from any piece of media is shock factors. And because of all of this evidence that is stacked against Yugioh, I just don't want it to be Yugioh, because at this point it would be so obvious. Now, if all of this information got dropped during this arc, and this is where it led the pieces of Yugioh being the sixth Goha president, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But the first hint of Yugioh being the sixth Goha president started with the opening shot where we see that silhouetted character for the first time, and it looked so similar to Yugioh. Obviously, it's silhouetted so you can't see it. All you can see is the hair, but the hair is almost identical to Yugioh's. I know people have argued Rook, but I have looked over that image so many times, and in my opinion, that looks way more close to Yugioh's hair than it ever did with Rook. I felt like maybe the argument could have been made with Rook with the mask that he had, but even when he started wearing the mask for the first time, the Luke Man mask, I still didn't think it looked like the silhouetted character. I still thought it looked like Yugioh. And because of that, and it's been lasting for so long now, I mean, we're almost 20 episodes into season 2, and we still don't know who the sixth Goha president is, and we look at now they're giving us more hints that it could be Yugioh, even though this was a hint that has been argued since the very beginning, even before we even got the frickin' opening, when we got the announcement of the characters that were going to be appearing in the new season, you know, Yuro, Eugene, Euron, Yuka, and Swirly. When all their bios got announced, a lot of people speculated on Yugioh right off the bat because he also fit the U name just like the other presidents. And then when the opening came out, it still made it more clear that, yeah, it can be Yugioh, because now you have the U name thing, which, okay, that one I can be fair about because of the fact that, you know, it might have just been a coincidence. But now the fact that a character is looking like Yugioh, I mean, I guess it could be a case of another coincidence, but the fact that Yugioh has two similarities with these presidents from the opening and just the whole U-name comparison, I feel like just saying it's a coincidence for two scenarios, I feel like is stretching it a little bit too much. And because of that, it makes it very clear to me, and I've thought this for a long time, that it's going to be Yuga, and I fought against it because I don't want it to be Yuga. I don't want it to be this obvious, but I think the writers are trying to keep people on the Yuga train. I really do believe that, because I don't think Konami's stupid. I think they thought that people were going away from the Yuga train and people thinking like, oh, maybe it's Rook, maybe it's Swirly, maybe it's a different character, but now because of this, I feel like, Bridge is saying, okay, let's get our attention back on Yuga being that 6 Goha president, because again, like, they have made this almost too obvious from the opening, because it has a silhouetted character that looks like Yuga, that, I don't know, like, it's really hard to argue it at this point. And even though I would love it to be different for that shock factor, because I'm going to be honest, I understand people will say, oh, it's still a shock factor because it's the main protagonist. You would never expected it, but I don't think that really applies because of all this evidence that's gone against Yuga, especially since, too, we know nothing of his backstory whatsoever, so that's another thing that fights against Yuga as well. So I guess you can say it's like a 3-strike system where, 3 strikes and you're out. The silhouetted character in the opening, Mimi mentioned the whole thing about the U, and knowing nothing about Yuga, I mean, it's just way too obvious at this point, and I don't want it to be obvious, but I feel like, based off of what they've been doing with this show, and especially from this episode, they are going to lead to Yuga being the 6th Goha sibling. I hope I'm wrong, because, again, that can cause that shock factor later on that, okay, they've made so much evidence towards against Yuga that play us into it, but it's not actually Yuga. They were trying to get us away from the actual threat by pinning it on Yuga, and I would think that would be great. But because of all we know right now, I'm going to say right now that Yuga is the 6th Goha sibling and president. It's just too much against him to where you can't overlook it at this point. Do I think that it's a little disappointing that it was obvious? Yeah, I feel like they could have maybe avoided this by not showing the silhouetted character in the opening, but there's nothing really much that you can do about it. But I still do think that it's going to be an interesting concept nonetheless of, why did Yuga never tell the group about this? Like, I don't think this is like a bad choice as the 6th Goha president. I don't think that at all. But I just wish it wasn't, like, kind of being that obvious to lead towards Yuga. I would have liked it to be a shock, especially since Yuga is our protagonist. And if we, like, found this 20 episodes later, they showed no hint whatsoever about this from the opening or what Mimi said in this episode, and then they revealed that Yuga was the 6th Goha sibling, I think that would probably have been the best choice, in my opinion, if they weren't obviously hinting towards Yuga, because you would never expect your main protagonist to also be a part of one of the villain groups that we had, because the 6 Goha siblings were the villains of the last arc, more in case with Yugioh more specifically, but still, like, he would have technically been part of the evil group of the last arc, and you would never have expected that, but obviously, that's not the route they went. I wish they would have did it a little bit different, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think this was like a bad decision whatsoever. I just think they should have made a little bit of a change, in my opinion, of course. But I would like to know your guys' thoughts on it. Do you think that Yuga is the 6th Goha sibling, or do you still think that there's a chance that it can be someone different? Would love to know your guys' thoughts on that. But getting off topic, I've went on that a little bit too much. Let's get back into the actual episode. So, after Mimi kind of had that whole run-in with Yuga, she goes to the cafeteria and she notices 2 plates on a table that just looks horrifyingly disgusting, decides to skip on it because that was an option that you can choose off the menu. She decides to ignore it. She gets the noodles and she is enjoying her lunch before Roman then steps in and gets a little bit angry at Mimi because she promised that she was going to eat one of Roman's meals. And to be fair for Mimi, she didn't even know that it was Roman's until Roman actually tells her that this was the meal that she cooked. And she gets horrified at this to the point where Roman decides to challenge her to a duel where if she wins the duel, she has to eat both curries mixed together, even though it was mentioned earlier in the episode by the chefs that it would be very dangerous if they decided to actually mix the two curries together. And Roman essentially says, you know what, if you lose this duel, you are going to mix it together and you're going to eat it. And then the chef comes in out of nowhere and basically goes to Mimi and kind of grabs her in a sense and says, okay, and then when she wins this duel, you have to take that curry off the menu. And Roman agrees in this, and I kind of feel bad for Mimi because she just got thrown into this out of nowhere, and now she's forced to duel to where she might have to eat this curry that can potentially blow up the Goha building. I mean, this is the second time that it's been mentioned that the Goha building is going to explode. The first time when Yugioh, when he was trying to destroy a ladybug in the last episode because of him being scared of ladybugs, I guess. And now Roman could have potentially blown up the building by mixing two curries together, which is insane to me. And let me just start off by saying this. What the hell happened to Roman's cooking? Like, yeah, she's been doing this, like, weird combinations before where she had the Yugioh curry and the Prima Katana curry, but I don't know, it's not really gotten this bad, especially since, look back at episode 68, she does the exact thing that, you know, these chefs are telling her not to do, and yet nothing really happened. I remember when she started mixing the curries together, and, you know, it turned purple because that's what the color would have turned if the two were mixed. And all that happened was it just got overflowed because you're mixing two curries together, and it overflowed to the point where it came on top on Yugioh, which obviously that could have just been more for like a gag state, but still, like, it didn't like make the case of it just exploding out of nowhere. But now apparently it can just blow up an entire building. Like, what the hell is she cooking in this curry? But that's besides the point. They obviously get prepared to duel. They actually go back to the underground area where the scientists are at because they want to test a glass that can be immune to explosions, which we didn't learn later on that did not work, and the scientists kind of get happy by it because of the fact that, you know, they still have to do more testing on this because obviously it didn't work, and they were surprised that the curry was able to cause this much force to where the glass that they made to protect from explosions still cannot withstand these two curries mixing together, especially since it was just like one drop of each of the curries getting on the glass and it just exploded the entire thing. And now I can understand why, you know, they said the whole entire Goha building would explode. But getting back into the duel, we see the duel between Roman and Mimi. General thoughts on the duel? I think it was a pretty interesting duel. We got to see Roman's new fusion, which, like Gakuto's new fusion, we saw it in the preview, so obviously we knew that this one was going to be in this episode. Again, I wish they wouldn't stop doing that. I really do not like the fact that they had shown this twice to where they showed a new fusion in the preview, but I guess maybe this is just going to be a consistent thing to where they'll be showing fusions in the preview. I kind of hope they stop doing that, but for the first two big fusions, nope, they decided just to show it in the preview. And we also got to see a new Dian Keto effect monster, which is pretty cool, though. I will say, though, the one thing I really would have loved them to show in this episode is the original Dian Keto spell. We know it's in Rush Duels. Why the hell are we not seeing the original Dian Keto spell card? Like, I just want to see it so badly because I know it's in Rush Duels, but they keep holding it off. Instead, they're doing all these different Dian Keto versions of effect monsters, which is not a bad thing at all. I think it's still pretty cool that they're kind of giving all of these different personalities to Dian Keto, but I still want to see that original spell card so badly. But obviously they felt like it wasn't the time to actually show it off in this episode, which is completely fine. You know, they don't have to show off every card in one duel. They can take it as slow as they want, and that's completely fine. But I would have really loved if they showed the original Dian Keto spell. But it was still cool to see that effect monster, and it was still cool to see Roman's new fusion. And Roman ends up winning the duel, which is Not really a surprise whatsoever. I don't think anyone was surprised that Roman was going to be the one to win this duel. I mean, it made the most sense, which, to be fair, you would have think that the Roman Tsuchiko duel was very predictable, but obviously that wasn't the case. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but Roman does win this duel, but Mimi was spared from having to eat the curry because the scientists decided that they wanted to take the entire pots, well, actually both of the pots, for an experiment. Roman agrees and they were allowed to take it, and she didn't apologize for not being able to give her curry, but Mimi says it's fine and there's nothing really to worry about it. And then we see a shot of the scientists actually taking experiments with the two curries, but Rook decides to intervene because throughout the duel he was extremely hungry. He wanted something to eat because he had not eaten anything all day, and he wanted to get some of that curry because, he's actually eaten the curry. Remember episode 13? He ate the curry before. It's not like this is the first time that Rook is eating one of Roman's curries, and he wanted to have some of it, and that's where he breaks into the lab and decides to start eating some of it, and even combines it to the point where the building does explode a little bit in a purple gas before everyone comes to the back room and just sees Rook eating the entire pot or pots of curry. And, Mimi's kind of surprised at this before looking back at Yuga and kind of bringing back the whole topic of maybe he is this 6th Goha president before ending off the episode. So, a very kooky episode to say the least, but I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it for the most part. I don't think it was a bad episode at all whatsoever. It's just, it was a weird episode, definitely a predictable episode to say the least, because, let's be honest, Roman, more than likely, again, like I mentioned earlier, the Roman Tsuchiko thing, I guess you can say, makes this not as predictable, because we've seen before where they'll have shock factors like this. This episode was definitely more of a predictable episode, but that's okay. This is just like the first beginning stages of the arc. Have predictable duels like this. It's not the end of the world. It's not that big of an issue whatsoever. But the one thing I want to say before I end off the review is, where the hell are we going? Like, I really just want to know, where is this show going right now? Because we still have the whole plot line of, is Yuga the 6th Goha president? We have the Yuo factor, and we have the Nanaho factor, which is a character that appeared in the last episode. Didn't do a review. I wasn't feeling good, so I do apologize for that. In fact, I might still have a little bit of a scratchy voice, but I really wanted to get this review out. So if it does sound like that, I do apologize. I feel a lot better now, but, it might show accidentally in the video. I've tried not to. I've drinking a lot of water, so hopefully we should be good. We have to wait and see. But, we don't really have a plot right now. We have all of these different things going on right now, but we don't have a set-in-stone plot. And I'm really worried about that for the sole reason that, this is more than likely going to be another 13-episode arc. And I know people will say in the comments, well, maybe it won't be. After all, the last arc was 15 episodes. Maybe they'll do another 15-episode arc. Hell, they might even extend it. But I don't think they're going to do that, because last arc, they essentially got one additional episode because one of the two episodes was a recap. So they just got an additional episode either for that plot episode that we got in episode 60, or to make, the Yuga-Luke Man duel a 2-part instead of a 1-part duel. That's what I truly do believe, that they wanted to have both of those two duels in there, or like those two episodes incorporated, but they couldn't do it by 13 episode standards without it being rushed. So that's why they decided to add an extra episode to it, and then add another extra episode for a recap, even though 68 essentially did that in the sense where it recapped the last 7 episodes, and they didn't really need to do that. But that's besides the point. Other than that, everything else has been a 13-episode arc, and I just do not see them changing it unless they prove me otherwise. I would love them to stop doing the 13-episode arcs. You guys know I've fought for that for a while, but I just do not think that's going to happen, and that it's still going to be a 13-episode arc. And if that's the case, they kind of need to get the plot going, because they don't have episodes to waste to not be showing any plot. Because I don't want this to be halfway into the arc, like 6-7 episodes in, and we still not know anything about the plot of this arc. and then it gets rushed at the end. I really do hope they don't do that, but obviously we're going to have to wait and see on that. But guys, that's going to be it for this episode review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your guys' thoughts on episode 71. Did you like the episode? Did you think the episode was okay? Or did you think this episode really wasn't that good at all? Let me know your guys' thoughts on the duel between Roman and Mimi. Did you think the duel was good, alright, or do you think it was bad? Your thoughts on seeing Roman's fusion, and your thoughts on seeing Mimi's new Dian Keto monster. And would you guys love to have seen, you know, the original Dian Keto spell card appearing in this duel against Roman? Would love to know all your guys' thoughts on this down below. But guys, that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.